Tony.
Which is not
Tony.
That's me.
Well, so we have,
Yes, Shivers, Tony, and Tony.
we have four right
Yeah, four.
now. We need one more to do
Yeah.
that.
Oh, your line is four. Okay, four. Yeah, Shivers, Tony, and Tony.
Do we have certified election results? Do we wanna?
Yeah, you guys want to get sworn in now? Because
Just-
then if we.
Okay,
No, we're
Do we
kidding.
have?
I was like, I have not
I
prepared.
know you're not, right?
Then we would have a quorum.
You're right.
Karen said, I had enough
Yeah,
today.
we can make a quorum if we need.
Number of fastballs, please.
Did she
We
say
don't,
she
not
was?
yet, but we have the two council
She
members
didn't say anything.
elected.
That's one thing I did know.
Well,
not
actually,
ready
it
to
sounded
swear
like
them
she
in,
wasn't
though.
gonna come online because she's out of
Although
town.
I assume we got certified,
And we missing
We
Rick.
did.
but just, right.
Yes, Mr. Nelson.
Yeah.
He said last time.
Okay.
Oh,
These cameras.
So the only way that we can have a quorum tonight is if we swear in new people.
Well, so we know that neither Tony Evans nor Tony Washington will be here?
Tony, like, the other Tony's not coming?
I don't know about Tony.
I didn't hear that.
Washington.
I can call him.
Evans is it?
Are you coming to the home? Yeah, it's the workshop. Okay. He said he's coming.
Okay.
Let's just wait for him to get here.
Councilwoman Shivers is not attending, or we don't know if she's attending?
I don't know. I was looking at this.
Parking. See if she's trying to call.
She didn't tell me yes or no, and I don't see an email. I did talk to her. Wow, really? She didn't? I'll call her. Was Tony at home? He said, I don't know, all he said was, oh, we have to. He forgot. Tony, like it's sunny outside.
I don't believe so. Like, I'm providing services or anything. I don't believe we have any contracts with Goodwill Hills.
I just happened to notice going down Natural Bridge, right there.
Yeah, there's that, Uplands Park, Velda, that's down.
Hillsdale,
Hillsdale.
Wellston, Bonita, Velda Village Hills, Velda Village, Northwoods,
Yeah.
Jennings.
Yeah.
they're all right there.
You know, we don't have anything,
Yeah.
our services stop at Lucas and Contact.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's right,
Okay.
basically.
That's kind of a good rule of thumb.
Northwoods has its own police
They
force.
do, yeah.
And a lot of these others are either St. Louis County or the co-op.
Velda City did, but they
I
disbanded
think
theirs.
she's about to
right?
get on,
Yeah,
I just
thought
sent her
so.
a link.
Yeah, I think they're with North County Cooperative.
Okay.
Eleanor is currently with St. John.
St. John.
See if she, reach. I just sent her the link.
Okay. She's not on right now.
Finally get the server fixed.
I believe so. They came back last night at 8:30 to finish it. It just took a long time to restore, and it seems like everyone has access to it. There were a few hiccups this morning, but everything's failing now. Miss Carter started today.
And did we get, did you get
That means it's okay.
access to the one program we're trying to get into? Did you get access for the Glen Echo grant program?
Miss Carter, the assistant secretary, the admin assistant, she traveled today. And Jen's still working on the assistant. I'm gonna continue working on that. Straighten her today, so.
Yeah, on that one, Marty, I've talked to the state, I've talked to the feds.
State has no role to play in it,
Well, no, the state doesn't have any, but the feds certainly do.
no question.
And so, you know, there's two entities that we have to get straight. That's the SAM.gov plus the compliance reporting site. And the SAM.gov has to be fixed. I sent you, I talked to somebody from a company that does contracting to do those kinds of
And
things.
I sent you back, it said, what's the cost?
Yeah, it's $5.99. So they said, I explained in detail what the issues were. And they said, yeah, we should be able to help you with that, but then I sent a link to you and they sent us a proposal. They said as soon as we say yes, then they can start doing it. I did find a document with the Village of Glen Echo Park and the physical address. That's the biggest issue, is to find that, go into SAM.gov, correct there, and, because the information on both sides has to match exactly. So,
She's not getting on.
SAM.gov is kind of
She
a
said she didn't have
verifier
it.
for the federal reporting process.
Let me call Tony, see how far he is.
I plan to come in tomorrow morning at about 11 and see how much we can, 11 or 11:30, somewhere around in there. Come over, bring my stuff that
Hello?
I've got.
Hey,
and
how
see
far
what we
away are
can
you?
do On that, if that's
Oh,
okay with you.
okay, thanks. He's on the
What are
line.
we gonna accomplish at 11:30? That we,
Perhaps get into the system. Somebody else needs to know the nooks and crannies of this other than me. And so, Kiana's never worked on it before.
Well,
the only thing we have to do is get into the program and file a report. And there's no, and it's gonna be all zeros.
Yeah, but before we do that, we have to straighten out the SAM.gov account.
I agree.
There's the well, it's, and so do the feds. Without that, they're not going to do anything, and right now, the one is in my name, and I have to attest that everything in the SAM.gov account is accurate. And with this present administration, I don't wanna make an error on that.
I understand that, but the next step, if we can't get her into it, is to have somebody pay to get it done.
So I know the city has the SAM.gov account, but I think Chief Sanders is the only one who has access to that account right now, so,
She's the only one who has access to the SAM.gov?
for the city right now, because of their, grant applications, but we can probably talk about this afterwards.
We're not in a meeting yet, we're just having a conversation.
Quorum.
Hey, what's up, Joe?
They're back.
Good.
Good, how are you?
Have a roll call, please.
Mayor Campbell,
Here.
Councilman Sachsenheimer.
Here.
Councilwoman Cleveland.
Here.
Councilwoman Gaye,
Here.
Councilman Washington.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. Old business, resolution, can I have a motion to approve the agenda?
I make a motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Ayes have it. Can I, old business, resolution number 25-22. A resolution of the City of Normandy, Missouri, accepting a proposal by Planning to Preserve LLC for the creation of a historic preservation plan. Marty is going to present this. The Historic Preservation Board had their meeting yesterday? Was it yesterday?
Tuesday.
Tuesday. So there were a lot of questions, and I think we'll have more clarification.
The
But the
first-
proposal is in your packet.
The first issue, when it came before the council the last time, was the amount of money that the consultant was asking for was more than was in the city budget. And so I spoke with the consultant and had her reduce the fee by $2,750, which brought it in line with the budget that the city has. The second issue was, there was extra money supposedly available, 4,000 some odd dollars, and I don't have it in front of me. And according to Andrew Daly, who is the administrator for this grant program, if we were not going to use the additional money for this consultant, then there was no additional money available for the city. That was his exact words. There was additional, I take that back, I think I know the answer, but I'll at least put it out there so you get the, there's additional money available because not all the grant money was used if you want to apply for another project, but there's no additional money available for this project.
So, one of the questions that I asked was, can the money be taken out of the Economic Development Fund? Did we get an answer for that?
I believe you can.
Is that a definite yes?
Not a definite yes. I'd have to have the attorney,
Question whether the economic development sales tax revenues could pay for this?
yes.
Okay, I haven't, let me just check that real quick, look at the statute.
Can I have a question while he's looking, check, is that okay? So, and I'm sorry, I do not know this, preservation plan at all. I don't know anything about it, so I want to ask questions, so when we vote, I want to vote correctly. This is for historic homes, right?
It's
Talk
the
to me.
establishment of a local historic, a historic plan for the city. So we'd be assessing what goes into it, and what we want to put into a plan, like, you know, Pasadena Hills has a historic preservation plan that is strictly Pasadena Hills. So this is money that's made available to communities who are looking at how to preserve their historic areas. It could be buildings, it could be lots of different stuff. And we don't have any plan whatsoever at this point. With a plan in place, like Marty said, we could go and ask for money to do some very specific things. This is just to put together a plan to figure out what we want in the plan. This is a grant-funded program that, there are parts of Normandy. Normandy is one of the oldest settled area in this part of the country.
Okay.
And, yeah, well, and so what we want to do is to figure out a way to identify those things that we think are really important to preserve, and then to go about having this plan on paper. And so it could be buildings, it could be homes, it could be land areas, it could be a lot of stuff. But right now, we don't have it. This is just to put together the plan. And then we would be deciding what elements we want to put into it. It's like, it's kind of like a land use plan. Everybody had to come up with one of those a few years ago. That every city had to come and say, okay, we're gonna use this area of our city for this, and this here, just strictly residential. So this is kind of, if you think of like a plastic overlay, like an overlay sheet, this would go on top of that land use plan and say, okay, this little area over here, and this little area over here, this particular little structure over here, we wanna make sure that, we just don't bulldoze it and get rid of it, because it has some significance. One of the places that we would want, and the materials associated with the place that we want, there used to be a children's home for African American kids. Oblate Sisters, who were Black Order, were right over on St. Mary's Lane. I remember going there. I have an aunt who was a nun. She wasn't an Oblate, she was the sister of the Holy Family. But when she came to visit us, she would always stay at that convent. So I've been in that building. And Terry has a lot of these documents and pictures of people and histories of people that we need a plan to preserve some of that, so that we can have the history of Normandy as a diverse community saved. It's not just for houses, and it's not just for Glen Echo Park. It's for any area that we, or the Historic Preservation Commission, or the council would want to explore and identify for historical preservation. There's the house, for example, that is over by the gardens over on Florissant, belongs to the school district. That's a historic house, and it's just been sitting there. One of the issues that you have in doing this is that if the structure itself is on the National Historic Registry, then there are rules about what you can or cannot do to it, including tearing it down, if you're using public funds to do that. So we would want to be able to identify those places that have some historical significance, and try to save those places and try to get funds, markers for certain houses that had significant history. And it's just a way of tying that history to where we are and where we're gonna go in the future.
But this grant would not pay for those markers or anything like
No.
that. This is gonna identify historic areas,
That was my next
historic
question.
properties,
Okay.
things of that nature, and give you a plan of what's historic in this community. After that, the city council will determine what they wanna do. Do they wanna put a plaque somewhere? Do they wanna create a historic district? That type of thing.
Do we want to
But,
put-
just because the property's on the National Historic Register, doesn't mean it can't be torn down.
Okay. That was
Well,
my
no,
other
I'm
question.
saying you can't tear it down in this state with public funds without going through SHPO. I know that.
You can tear it down.
You can tear it down, but you have to have permission from the state to do so.
Right.
Did we figure out an answer to the in-kind contributions, the amount?
Yes, the economic development sales tax revenues can be used to put towards this project, absolutely.
And then what about the in-kind contribution?
In-kind contributions can be used as part of this grant.
Yes.
Is there, how much, what's the limit?
There's not a limit.
No,
Oh.
no, there's limits, there's really, limits on minimums rather than maximums in the economic development sales tax,
Okay.
statute. So, no, both of those are, I think, pretty clearly authorized by the statute, so.
Okay.
That's one thing,
Yeah, go ahead.
two quick things. One thing that, I didn't hear anybody mention clearly is that once this plan is in place, this will put people that are in the know first to have the ability to get grant money to preserve their businesses and homes, so, just so that you know that also. So we need to let the whole city know, not just certain select groups. And then two, I've been coming to city council meetings, as many as you all know, whether in person or virtually, for over 4 years. I haven't missed not even 2 of them. I have heard a lot of times when you all need money, that you all go into the Economic Development Fund, and I don't see any economic development happening over here. That's concerning to me, especially considering the finances we just mentioned 2 weeks ago, and we're already negative $100K for February financials. We keep dipping in a fund that's not being utilized. Last time I heard it being mentioned, it was to give Sam and other people a raise. I'm nervous about that. I don't know how much financial acumen you all individually have, if you go through your packets, but the suggestion to keep going there and get funds when we're not actually doing any business development, and we're always short monthly on income for the city is beyond concerning.
So when it comes to the plan does not, and correct me if I'm wrong, the plan does not give anyone a leg up. It just basically
Yeah.
says,
That's active.
this is what you guys have.
Right.
This
I mean,
is an
active.
inventory of what you have.
Right.
You as a city need to come up with a plan of what to do. And that would take community involvement. So no one's gonna
You all don't
have,
really- But let's be honest, you all don't really involve the community, that's why I said that.
well,
There are people-
let's also not be negative. So let's do this. So when we come up with a plan, we want to make sure that we communicate that well, right?
Yeah,
That
so
this is
here's
the
the
plan and everything like that.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
But as I said, if we're being honest, let's not say being negative, let's say being honest. You all went crazy to make sure that you got elected. We've had previous issues. You all don't even pass out paperwork to let residents know things. So when I'm saying the plan is the plan, but afterwards, when there's grant money, like, we have real estate agents here that have multiple properties, she's gonna know about it. Or people in Ward 1 or 2 gonna know about it, or people that live in that small area.
Well, I think that's
sort of
what,
finished.
yeah.
I
I
just
think,
wanna make sure you know, particularly if you all have a horrible track record of communicating with residents. And all I'm saying is that if you all are gonna approve this plan and have this out-of-state woman do this plan so that the council and the city can have funds later, I'm okay with that. My problem is, you all do not accurately, effectively, or even try to communicate with all of the citizens. And if you only let certain citizens know, they're gonna get a lot of the funds first. You know that's true, everyone in this room knows that's true. I just wanna make sure that does not continue, especially with something as sensitive, especially if you wanna use economic development funds.
I believe I believe that most of that statement is incorrect. So it is, I believe that most of that statement is incorrect.
Did you
We
consider
have,
the
we
city
have,
partners
we,
who wanted to tear down
the
that
goal,
bridge?
the goal,
It just happened 2 months ago.
the goal of this meeting is to figure out whether or not we want to go forward with the plan. So then, and people in the community, if you read it, are supposed to be involved. We're supposed to,
How
we're
do
stating.
they know if you don't communicate?
So we have meetings, it is in the newsletter, we have them on Zoom, you can look at them at your leisure. We have minutes, you can call and ask for them.
Most people
So-
don't do that, though. You know
Well, that is not something that, I mean, unless you want us to go around and knock on everybody's
what you
door
did for the
every
election.
time. No, every time we have a meeting, that is not something that is feasible. So what I would like to do is for people to be active in knowing that these are the times that we have meetings, and these are the times that we are doing, which we do, we
But you got
communicate
to-
those.
Most people do not go to the city website. I would never tell you or anyone in this room, if you wanna know what's going on with your federal government, that you have to fly to DC once a month to know what's going on. That
No, but I
doesn't
think you
make
would, I think you would look at this, I think you would look at, I hope even if you don't like the person that is elected, that you would be tuned into the website for the White House and also for key things and look at that and look at the news and look at things that are happening. I would,
That would be perfection. What I'm just saying, Yolanda, and again, I don't really deal with spin, I deal with truth and facts, not feelings. You all have a horrible record of communication.
so we will take that into
Yeah, just
consideration.
communicate.
So what we will do, like I said, let's be positive and let's be proactive. We are here
And let's
now.
do better also, right?
Yeah, we are here now, right? We have new people that are coming in. Clearly, you have expressed your feelings about this. I would say, going forward, you have a council person that's right here, you have another council person that's here. I think that's not here today, but he actively is usually here. I think it would be good if you would talk to them about establishing a leadership team, like in your community, on your block, or in your subdivision, about, hey, when you guys go to a meeting, come and tell me, and we can like figure out a way to communicate this to people together. But to say that we are not actively trying to include people and actively trying, I don't think that that's the case. We have had meetings, we put them on Zoom, we do our due diligence to do that. So it is part of the earnest, and I say this all the time. Don't just come when you're angry. You should be tuned in to what is happening in your community. And having a neighborhood leadership person, or a person that is going to be a leader in the neighborhood, or not even in the neighborhood, just on the street. I'll take these 5 streets and I will give out the information. I will take these 2 streets and I will give out the information. That does a lot to give out information to people. Even if you take 5, that's 5 less streets, that's 5 less people that don't know, right?
I appreciate that, but I'm just saying, before we put it on individual council members, because I've had a council member in my ward for 20 years, and we all know he doesn't do anything. So we have.
I would respectfully disagree with that too.
You don't live in my ward, so your opinion on that is null and void.
No, it's not. I am on this board and I would respectfully disagree with that. And this is what I don't want to do.
It's not the truth.
This is what I don't want to do. I am not going to bash someone's performance who is clearly not here to defend
Okay,
themselves.
well,
I am not going to
I'll
do that.
be
And
here
I
next
don't
time.
think that that is a productive conversation. So what I will do now is I will say that the goal at hand is to talk about whether or not we are going to ratify this and to bring it. And we have heard your concerns. We are actively trying to, as a community, do better, as a whole do better. And I think everybody needs to do
Don't
that.
try to whitewash what has happened.
I am not whitewashing anything. What I'm saying is everybody has a job to do.
Yolanda, this isn't your classroom.
Everybody
I'm not
has a
your
job
child.
All right, let me interject, and
So this is what
I probably shouldn't interject. We're becoming argumentative, and we're not accomplishing
This is what-
anything being
we just need
argumentative.
to move on.
It needs to come from the city.
No, we need to move on.
It needs to come from the
I
city.
have heard you and we need to move on.
You heard me, but you're not listening.
Well, that is your opinion. I've heard you and we need to move on.
You didn't even, you don't even know
You
what I'm
mentioned the newsletters,
Mhm.
to just simplify things, why can't the newsletter just go out to the neighborhoods?
They're mailed out.
I don't
We
get
didn't
it.
get any.
So if you don't get a newsletter, that's something that we need to know. So like, we need to know if the newsletter, we send out the newsletter how many times we've done it? It's supposed to come out quarterly, so every quarter you're supposed to get it, so if you don't get one, actually, that was the other question. If you don't get one, you should get one probably like in the next few weeks. So if you don't get one, then you should say, hey, I didn't get a newsletter. And I've walked around to people's homes and I've asked them about the newsletter, and some of them said, I never got it or whatever, and everything like that. So that's something that we are actively looking into. So if you don't get it, you should definitely tell us.
Can I interject something?
Yeah.
Okay. It's clear that we have a communication problem. It's clear, I mean, we know that, it's not news. What I think the council should do in the future is to come up with some schemes and some technology perhaps.
Wait, before you do that, I just want to stay on topic.
I
And
am
we
gonna,
have gotten on topic.
this is topic.
But
just-
I don't want to,
Okay.
I want to talk about this resolution. I got off topic and I want to talk about this resolution. So the questions need to be guided towards this resolution right now. If that's something that we want to talk about, we can certainly put it on the next agenda for like communicating and everything. But right now, I want to get done with this resolution. We're at 6 o'clock and we started late, so. Any more questions about the resolution? No. So we know that we can use in-kind funds and we know that it can come out of economic development. And what we wanted, and the reason why I'm asking that question is because typically, when you, have projects, you wanna pull from a restricted fund first. That is an economic, what do I wanna call it? What? I mean, as far as like budgeting, you always wanna pull from a restricted fund before you go into your general fund. So this is an appropriate thing for me to ask, where can the money come from? Because your general fund is like your savings, right? And so we don't wanna pull from our savings when we know that this money we have set aside and we could take it out of the general fund. That's why we have a street fund, that's why we have a CDBG fund, because there are certain things that you can do under that umbrella. And you don't wanna pull from your general fund because that is your safety net. And so when I ask the question, can it come from economic development, it's because we won't pull from the general fund, we would pull from that restricted fund, which has certain requirements. Yeah.
So are there any other projects that are pending before we start pulling from the, and I don't know how that works.
Well,
Please forgive me with that too,
The
so.
budget, hold on, I got it. Where did I put it?
Looking for this.
Oh, yeah. I always forget. Okay, so for Great Streets, we had, contracted services, we didn't have anything for weeds, utilities, we had money set aside, that was 20,000, street lighting is 25. The median money we haven't used yet, so that's in there too, but even after doing all of that, the expenses, we still have $296,000 left. 296,000,
Okay.
yeah. Wait, was that right? No, that was the expenditures, I'm sorry.
Oh,
What fund is that?
That was the economic
Economic
development.
development.
It's,
On the economic development sales tax.
balance for 251, 139, is that right? 251,
251K?
yeah, 251, 139.
Says economic development money.
That's the economic development fund budget that we budgeted for. It ends at September 30th of 2025.
I want to ask, this project was identified in the budget at in this fiscal year, right?
Yes.
It was, yeah.
Yeah,
right?
it's
Yeah,
there.
Yeah,
Okay.
so,
So it's already budgeted.
Yeah,
yeah,
and what we were trying to do is to not go over budget.
Okay. Thanks for
Uh-huh.
clarifying.
I know you mentioned Glen Echo had historical, recognition, is that just national or
It's
is that state
national.
also? Okay, so you can
That's
go,
only at the national level.
okay.
But to get, when I was talking about how you can use funds, because the CDBG funds can be used for blight abatement, but there are restrictions on it, and you can use that anywhere, regardless of the median income in any particular area for blight abatement. But if the house is on the National Historic Registry and we want to use CDBG funds for that, then SHPO requires extra documentation about why the house can't be saved. It's just an extra step. It's not that you can't do it.
I agree.
any other questions? Okay, so, no other questions or anything? Everybody's good? Can I have? Hold on, I gave my packet away.
There you go, Mayor.
Oh, thanks. Can I have a motion to adopt resolution 25-22?
So moved.
Second,
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
aye.
Any opposed? ayes have it. New business. Discussion of occupancy permit ordinance.
Can I present it? Yes. I just need to know how do we, I know Vicky is over it,
No,
but,
yeah, go ahead, I'm sorry.
but this is important, that we have to get this particular ordinance done, like, updated as soon as possible. And just going through Ward 1, and sometime Ward 2, Burdell Hill, we gotta do something because I know Rick said he's having issues with trying to go get to some of these homeowners that doesn't have information, like the LLCs, or they're living somewhere else, like out the country. How can we stop that part, from people buying these properties and just, they're buying the properties and they're doing the bare minimum and they're sticking people inside the house? That's number one. The outside looks a mess. And then the tenants are just, of course, a big, huge mess too. But we got to do something with, like one house in particular, I'm not gonna say the address in the street, but they did like the bare minimum to this house. The house was already horrible looking. They did the bare minimum. Our windows over there, I don't know if anybody else, Ward 1, we have those crankable windows. At least if you still have those windows, they're just horrible. Well, they didn't change the windows. They're cracked, they look horrible, and they want to put someone in there. We should have some standards of what these houses look like. I mean, that's just me, I don't know how we can do that. Should be some standards of when you buy these homes, don't go by well, right now, the majority of the houses just put a Band-Aid on it, just stick people in there, but we have to have some standards of what these homes should look like, what our expectations are. Like, there's a house next door to me, they need a new roof. It's patches on there. How come there's not I mean, we can't make people do it, but we need some standards, what I'm asking for. Hold on for a second. Trash bills. That should be part of the ordinance. Like, if they don't pay their trash bills, just say they don't pay it twice in 1 year. That should be the responsibility of the homeowner, not the renters now, because they're not gonna pay it. Or, in this case, they're putting trash in Bermuda's trash can, because they don't wanna pay their bills because the bill is, whatever it is, the cost is right now. Or they're just putting their trash anywhere. That has to stop. I know Rick can't go in the backyards, but some of these backyards, my neighbor's yards, are a huge mess. They're putting tires back there. They don't cut down the weeds. We need some help with the ordinance need to be changed. That's just 3 things. I've got a whole list on my desk at work, and I just start typing things up, so go ahead.
Can I go in reverse order on those? So let's talk about what the code currently allows the city to do, and then what some possible fixes that the council might consider
Okay.
To the code that I've drafted for other cities and I think would work here as well.
Okay.
So as far as like, you know, trash, rubbish, nuisances, overgrown weeds and stuff, all of that stuff you're describing is already unlawful under the code, right? So it's a matter of, you are correct that the Rick, police officers, Marty, nobody can just walk into people's backyards without an administrative search warrant, right?
Right.
So that means we need complaints, right? Code enforcement is largely complaint driven. We only have one code enforcement guy. I mean, there's just a limit on how much he can do. But if complaints are coming in, then you know, we can. I mean, it can be as simple as a neighbor sending a photo over, and now we've got probable cause that, you know, we can go, you know, start having a nuisance hearing and things like that. So
Can I stop you on that?
sure.
The problem with that is, if I'm in my backyard and I'm taking a picture of my neighbor, they're looking at that picture and saying, you took that, I've got a neighbor like that who's very combative,
Sure, I
very
understand.
organized.
Or,
Yeah.
or neighbors can allow code enforcement officers, like Rick will go, if there is a house that has a problem in the backyard, Rick will go to the neighbor and say, hey, will you let me in your backyard so I can see what's
Still
going
a
on
problem.
over there? So, I get that there's,
Yeah.
and there's just no way around that,
I know,
right? So, but as long as we're getting complaints and you know, or if stuff is visible from the street, that is also, like, sometimes you can kind of from the street, you can get a decent vantage point to the backyard and kind of tell what's going on back there. But I would say that those issues are not a code issue, they are an enforcement issue. And that's just,
Yeah.
maybe we need to talk about budgeting, manpower, things like that, maybe shifting priorities, you know, but the code as it stands is sufficient to actually address all of those things. Same with trash, right? So everyone is, all residents are required to have trash service under the code, right? And they can be cited if they don't. I haven't looked specifically at this question, but I suspect that either the tenant or the homeowner could be cited for that, or both.
Or both.
Right, or both. So I don't think we have to limit ourselves to, trying to go after the homeowner when the homeowner is, you can't get me LLC based in Honolulu, right? Maybe we can cite the tenant as well and get some compliance
Can we
that way.
change that though? Can we change where we can actually, wherever the LLC is, Hawaii or Russia or wherever, can we go and penalize the owner of the LLC?
Yes, and I'm gonna get to that, yes, I'm gonna get to that. So, so as far as, that's trash and that's, nuisance, property maintenance violation, stuff like that. I will also say another thing is any sort of, you were talking about roof, windows, all that stuff. Let me just make two comments about that. First of all, again, all of those kinds of issues, we can currently cite the tenant for that. I know a lot of people think that's a little unfair. We're a homeowner. Maybe they don't, maybe they do. So people are different, but some people might think, my whole career I've prosecuted code enforcement issues, and so, especially when I was with the county doing this, everyone would come in and be like, well, it's my landlord, I don't do that, and I was like, well, call your landlord and tell them to call me, but you're the one here. And they are, under the law, responsible for the maintenance of that property if they are the tenant. That is just something they need to be aware of when they get stuck with a bad landlord. So the other thing with regard to, windows, roofs, whatever, pieces of the house that are not compliant with the property maintenance code or other portions of the building code, the occupancy permit code provides that no certificate of compliance or occupancy permit shall be issued until all violations of the building and construction regulations have been corrected and brought into compliance. So Rick does, when new tenants or someone buys a house and they move into the house, or a landlord owns a house or an apartment building and tenants move out, tenants move in, anytime there's that change in occupancy, a new occupancy permit is required. Now, of course, there is an enforcement issue of how do we know sometimes when tenants are moving in, moving out, right? That's a game landlords love to play, right? It's whack-a-mole and they know they can get away with it. And we'll get to what we can possibly do about that. But right now, the code is set up so that all of those kinds of violations have to be abated before the occupancy permit will be issued. As I mentioned, sometimes they don't tell us when they've changed occupancy. And sometimes we get LLCs that are based in, who knows where, right? And you can cite an LLC all day, but they're not gonna come to Normandy Municipal Court. It's not gonna happen, right? So the question is then, what do we do? And so I prepared for giving you guys a little presentation. So we'll talk about, what I want to talk about is just what we can do with occupancy permit in terms of what information we can require an LLC to give the city before we'll issue an occupancy permit, what kinds of restrictions we can put on the occupancy permits themselves that might, produce compliance with some of these things, and then what are our enforcement options, particularly where we have out-of-state LLCs that either they aren't registered in Missouri or they have some sort, there's I forget what it's called, I think it's called CT Corporation if I remember correctly, but it's this kind of catch-all company in Jeff City that any out-of-state LLC can use them as their in-state registered agent. I'm pretty sure it's just a trash can in Jefferson City where, the mail goes right into it. So, as far as what kind of information can we require of an applicant for an occupancy permit, I think we can require that what I've done I have another municipality that has probably half their population are renters, right? So this is a major issue for them as well. No joke. And so what we did with their occupancy permit ordinance about probably a year ago or so was we required two things. One is when the applicant, it could be the tenant, it could be the property owner, and we could even change the code to make it the property owner. Don't even allow the tenant to apply, it has to be the property owner
Yeah.
that applies. They have to provide proof that the tenant has permission to reside in the unit, right? So that can be a lease, right? A signed lease would be proof that they have permission. But for some, any number of reasons, sometimes landlords don't want to have a lease. I don't know why, but they'd rather just have a handshake deal. In that case, we require the property owner to execute an affidavit saying, I authorize Jane Doe to occupy Unit 1 at 123 Main Street, right? That way, we don't have an issue where we don't know if the property owner is even aware. I've run into that situation where someone will hold themselves out as the property owner. Vicky knows what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I know
And,
exactly what you're talking
and will, put tenants in there, right? And then how do we actually know whether the true property owner even knows what's going on here, right? So that's one thing we can do. Another is that we can require if it's an out-of-state LLC, and it's a little tougher with an in-state, well, no, if it's a corporation, excuse me, because I'm just trying to think of the statute that authorizes the city to do this. If it's an individual who lives out of state, John Smith lives in Illinois and he owns a property in Normandy and he rents it out. I don't think we necessarily have statutory authority to require him to give us a local registered agent or property manager. But anyone who, I misspoke. If they live in state, we can't require that. If they live out of state, we can require it. Or if it's a corporation, in or out of state, we can require it. So if there's a corporation that purchases a property, they want to rent it out, they apply for an occupancy permit, I think we can require that they identify who the property manager is, the actual local person within, say, 50 miles of the property who will have their address, will have their information, and the property manager under the property maintenance code can be cited for the condition of the property. So now we have a flesh and blood human being that we can issue a ticket to that will respond. We also, this can also be a little tricky, but under the property maintenance code and other technical codes, like the building code, there is case law that says if we identify the owner of the LLC, right, they can be cited as well. There are some restrictions on that, but generally speaking, they can be cited as well. Now, they might also live in Hawaii, right, and they're not gonna, care about Normandy Municipal Court issuing, Normandy doesn't issue warrants, but we put hold on people's license. They might care about that. But the point is, we can require basically a flesh and blood human being be identified as the property manager that we can cite in the event of some sort of a code violation.
So what are we doing right now?
So right now, we don't have any of that, right? So we do have right now on the application for the permit, we require the name of the applicant, which could be, Slumlord LLC. We require the names, date of birth, and relationship of all persons who are going to occupy the property. And then we have such other information as shall be required by the building commissioner, but I don't like that kind of loose language. It kind of gets cities into trouble. I like to spell out exactly what we're going to require so that we know to require it in every situation.
So before you go, so owner can actually fill it out first, right?
Fill out the application for the occupancy permit?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they can, I think you probably said this, you might say the same thing, so they actually, I'm sorry to interrupt, they can
That's
actually complete this application and then put people in a house without them coming here for an occupancy permit, right? No, is that two different things? We're talking about two different,
Are you talking about?
Maybe I missed something.
It's an illegal occupancy.
Right, if the landlord, I guess if the landlord gets an occupancy permit that says that the landlord can reside in the home or the apartment, but then they put somebody else in, that's illegal.
so the application, I'm sorry, I'm kind of, so you can tell my passion with this.
So if the owner fills out the occupancy permit, and then when he rents it out, the person he rents it to has to come out and also fill out an occupancy permit as well, right?
Well, there would be an amendment to the occupancy permit, and usually the landlord's not gonna, apply for the occupancy permit until they know who's moving in, right? So, but yeah, everybody who lives in a unit or in a home has to be on the occupancy permit. And if somebody else moves in, then there needs to be an amendment to the occupancy permit. And that's as simple as, the owner can contact the city and say, hey, I've got a new tenant, or tenant's, brother is gonna be living with them for a while, right? And then the occupancy permit can be amended. Now, I do think there will be, if there's an amendment to the occupancy permit, I believe that will trigger another,
Inspection.
yes, it will trigger another inspection. Yeah.
Can I make a quick comment? Yes, Karen, I agree with everything that you said, and I know you've seen a bunch of my emails. I think that your main issue, Tony's main issue, a lot of the residents, whether people want to be accountable for this or not, some of these things that you're asking for, they're not specifically in our code, but they are. Our problem is enforcement. As you know, I got up here a few weeks ago and I talked, it's negligence of enforcement. I had this in 20-something people in the 50-60 period because of a renter on my street that was not paying their trash bill before Tony Washington was in office. He could have said, we were both emailing ungodly, and there was never any enforcement. And before Mark left, I'm pretty sure most of you all know I like Mark. Mark even said in a meeting and to me that Mr. Sampson, our code enforcer, was spending the bulk of his time in 3 and 4, in particular at FBA. And I have sent countless messages saying you all need to do an audit on him on the work he does. He shouldn't be there every day and in 3 and 4. And if 1 and 2 are suffering, you need to restructure what he does. I have worked extensively with Code Works in Creve Coeur and in Chesterfield. A lot of you all will be shocked at the number of renters they have there. The issue that they don't have is that they have enforcement. If Rick even drove around once a week and he would see these new homes, oh, this home has a for sale sign, oh, this home has a bunch of mail and signs here, and he monitored those properties, we can start staying on it like that, even, because people aren't gonna self-report. Tony and I reported somebody a year and a half ago, their owner died, and all of a sudden there were 10 kids living in that house, running up and down our neighborhood. We told Samson didn't do anything about it. We have to start enforcing what we have. Because if we keep adding additional codes, that's great, we can say we have it written down, but if it's not enforced, it doesn't matter. It's just like a speeding limit. If it says 15 and the chief lets people do 100, it doesn't mean anything. So we have really got to figure out how can we best utilize Samson. And again, he can't spend all his time in 3 and 4 when wards 1 or 2 are suffering, and that's from the mouth of our previous mayor.
Well, I would say that Rick does a great job in Ward 1, because I call him, I send emails all the time to him and now to Marty about things, and he'll say, oh yeah, I know that address, and yeah, this is happening, this is, I mean, he does, I know Ward 1, I can talk about Ward 1. He knows a lot of things that sometimes is shocking to me, like, so you've been there already. He said, oh yeah, this is what's going on, and this is what I'm doing. And that's why this is on the schedule now, because I asked him about what is it that the council can do. He said they need to collect some data from the owner. That's his problem. He can't, there's no information about the owner that he can send this information to. And that's just one of his problems.
We can get it from the county or from the state, so they have to register when they purchase the property, yeah.
Yeah, but these are LLCs with these phony,
Can I?
go ahead.
Okay,
I'm sorry.
so, a couple of things, what most municipalities do, they have a landlord license. The application for the landlord license has to include all of their actual contact information, not just the LLC. And so when you, even if you didn't have a landlord license, when the inspection is applied for, that form that you fill out has lines for them to complete that have all the information on there that should be local. But one of the big things that you were talking about, code enforcement and consistency, Tuesday, write your senators. They're gonna be voting on Safer, Simpler Missouri. This is, I've only been working on this for about the past 5 years with the Board of Realtors. Safer, Simpler Missouri seeks to simplify building codes to facilitate economic development and improve residents' health and safety. Missouri is one of only 6 states that does not have statewide statewide code enforcement and code, an established code. So they're gonna be voting on this Tuesday. Write your senator now and tell them that you support this. You can look up all the information on safersimplermo.com. So don't take it from me.
Can you say that again?
Safer, simpler, mo.com.
Can I speak to this, please?
Yes.
I know a little bit about this. Normandy is now using the 2009 version of the Builders Code.
And that is the problem.
That is the problem, and they do this every other year. They update these things, and so the 2009 is issue. One of the requirements of being able to adopt the newer code, most people are at 15 now, 2015, and so it's still behind that, is you've got to actually physically own the code books. I physically gave the code books to Normandy because we were using 15. The council needs to make sure that our code is about the same book that the county's using. That's one very simple thing that we need to do. So that would be just an ordinance, I would imagine.
Yeah, very
adopting the code and always matching to at least what the county is doing. In terms of data, I'd never seen the housing database until after the last meeting when I just sat down with Kiana and she showed me how it works. There are some automatic downloads that you can do from the county real estate database into our database. You have to write a program to do it, and you run them every so often, but you gotta have somebody who knows how to do that and wants to do it. So part of that is just writing a script. You pull the data down, you put it in a suspend file, you double check some stuff, and then you import it and overwrite what's in your database already. So keeping the database up to date is really very important. Third thing is data collection of people who live in places and making sure that that matches. It's a time-intensive process, but we have only about, 5,000 people or so who live in, how many physical structures do we have? How many houses? That's not that much to do. I talked to Julian about this. He's our newly elected other 4th Ward person. He's an IT person. So I do believe that it would be possible for us to update the housing database and do some extraction of that data by simple programs to send out emails to people. And you can use the housing database for the same thing that we want to do with communication. That's all.
If I might add one thing to piggyback off of Karen. There's some, and we've got to figure out a way around it. We have a house that's been vacant for probably 10 years plus. And Normandy has consistently cut the grass, picked the trash up, and filed the complaint. My issue is this. They go to the county, the person on the house, he doesn't live there. So there's no current information at all from St. Louis County. Then they hide behind the LLC, which is out of state. So right now, we got a house with nobody in it. It's literally starting to fall apart because people haven't lived in it for over 10 years. And they cannot even find an owner.
Okay, let me.
To that.
So, let me jump in. So, I'll say with regard to specific houses, like, I'm talking pretty generally here, right?
Right.
So, like, if there are particular items, issues that need to be looked into, send those to Marty, and he and I can work on that, because Sam and I have, when Sam was here, he and I would regularly do that, and there are ways to track people down and figure, and there are other abatement procedures, like we've done several demolitions, so if there are particular issues, bring them and we'll look at, that's not what I'm talking about at this level
Okay,
tonight.
that's why I wasn't
And so
sure.
there are two other things I did wanna address real quick, because I know we have other things to talk about, and I know my opinions can sometimes lean into shaggy dog territory. So, one is, there was a comment, about landlord licenses. So charter cities have the authority to require rental permits or landlord licenses.
Are we charter?
But we are not, we are a third-class city, and there is case law, because you remember, we actually discussed this a few years ago, and so I worked with Mayor Beckman to figure out the legality of this kind of an ordinance, and there's some clear, I mean, it couldn't be clearer in the case law. Clifford Hyman Real Estate versus City of Jennings, which is a third-class city, said that, you know, the third-class city's authority to license and tax any sort of commercial operation is set forth in the business license ordinance, and rental properties are not included. So you can call it a landlord license, you can call it a rental permit, you can call it whatever you want, but if it's a business license on landlords, third city can't do it. So unfortunately, because that would solve a lot of issues, but that's for charter cities, not third-class cities. So the other thing I wanted to mention, this is something that some other cities do, and then it does bring up the question of, you know, manpower, but right now, for owner-occupied homes, rented homes, any sort of, you know, structure that is occupied, the occupancy permit is valid until there's a change of occupancy. But what some cities do is require for rental properties that a new certificate of compliance, the kind of the technical procedure here is homeowner or property owner applies for an occupancy permit, Rick goes out and inspects. If everything is compliant with the code, he issues his certificate of compliance, and then the city issues the occupancy permit. So what we can do is require that the certificate of compliance on rental properties expires every so often.
Yes.
Whether it's 1 year, 2 years, 1 year would be a little much. But even if it's 3 years, and then we're kind of cycling through, I've seen some cities even do it by ward. There's lots of ways to skin the cat here. But that at least, you know, getting into a rental unit every 3 years is better than what we're doing now.
Yes.
And what that will do is cause people to either start fixing things up or not want, or, you know, those types of landlords who don't want to put the money into their property aren't going to invest in Normandy properties.
Right.
And hopefully that will draw in better property owners. So again, I've done the research on this. I don't believe there's any sort of like equal protection issues that come up by distinguishing between renters and homeowners. I don't think it would raise any fair housing issues, you know, as long as it's being, you know, equitably and fairly and across the board applied, but the actual ordinance itself should be cut, you know, past muster. So that's all I wanted to say was I think that, frankly, that I think is going to be your most powerful tool, right?
I like that. We need to implement that.
Do you guys have a date or time for the next, date and time for the next, code enforcement subcommittee?
The code enforcement subcommittee has consisted of people getting around the table, me doing most of the research. What I had hoped to do with that was to publish a citizen's guide to code enforcement. So I've got, you know, a lot of places have these, it's not rocket science. You just put together, this is the process, this is how it works, these are your rights and responsibilities and so forth. This is how things happen. Where I got hung up with doing it is that Rick was never part of our conversations. So even though Sam was there and the former Public Works Director was there, I couldn't get, you know, what actually happens. I can get a schematic that says this is what's supposed to happen. But what I wanted was what is happening. Because what we wanted to do and what I wanted to do is look at ways of finding how to fix the problem. And part of it gets back to my comments on communication. We have to quantify things. We have to have, if Rick knows about this house and everything that's wrong with it, it needs to be documented somewhere some way that somebody else can see and understand. It can't just be in one person's head, because we know that when one person leaves or something happens to that person, as this city has seen before, the knowledge dies with them, and we need to be able to use technology to capture the information. And one of the difficult things is we can put all the technology that we want in front of somebody, but if they can't use it or don't want to use it, then that becomes a problem. Now, I'm not pointing out anything, but if we don't have the manpower or the human power, the person power to do these jobs, then we need to make the doing of the job as easy as we can. And that can be done with some other approaches.
So we don't have a date and time.
That's not what I said, I haven't gotten to that yet. The date and time, I can set it I mean, the other meetings that we've had, I can look on the schedule. I can set one of those up at just about any time, but if I wasn't getting anywhere and I wasn't getting the information that I needed, there wasn't any reason to have any more meetings.
Well, I think what, in my mind, when I brought the idea forward, it was that we would, from that committee, make a vision and I guess like goals, and then have action plans that would help us achieve those goals. Because what you don't want to do in a community where people are already monetarily strapped is always penalize them for you don't want to penalize people for not having enough money to do, at the end of the month. So the idea was it's not just going to be one thing that we can do. It's going to have to come from different avenues. And it's going to have to come from also not just, Normandy is going to have some skin in the game, in my opinion. We're going to have to reach out to community agencies and do that. We need to also make sure, like you said, that our code is up to date, but we also need to make sure that we are educating and keeping up with the sign of the times, and whatever computer programs there are, or whatever other instruments that people are using, that professional development piece for code enforcement is a must, just like with courts, just like with being a city clerk.
Right.
Then the other thing is, we need to make sure that, like you said, we have like a specific plan. But that is everyone coming together. So not just us as council people, but also if those people, and I've talked to people that have said like they were cited for things, and they were like, this process was too, like, I didn't have enough time. Now, maybe the person didn't know, just because you get a citation, you can also ask for a, what do you call it? An extension and stuff. Maybe they didn't, maybe they weren't educated in that. But I think it's important that even people who don't have problems, and people that do have problems, like who haven't been cited or have been cited, can come together and say the same thing. So what I'm saying is, about the meetings, just having like a consistent meeting time, and then letting people know that they're gonna be held at this time, like people can set their schedule to that and be willing to give input, and if they can't come, they can send an email or whatever. But I think we need to stay consistent with the times, like you said, and it just can't come from one person's, like you said, one person's head. It has to be, like all of us.
Right. I'll set a date. I think it can be in the same time frame that we had previously done it. When was that, Kiana? Do you remember?
That's about 5:30.
5:30.
5:30 on
The first Thursday.
first Thursday.
So,
can't do it.
we're jumping ahead a little bit, and not to totally derail things, but this is something I was gonna bring up during boards and commissions. If, we really ought to consider making this a formal subcommittee and assigning actual
Right.
council members, less than a quorum to it, and then that way there can be minutes, right? It can be a properly notified meeting that residents could attend, And then the committee would also have some authority to,
Right.
you know, make employees come talk to them, right? So.
Yeah, well, it wasn't, yeah.
Yeah, I know it probably
Well,
wasn't a refusal issue, but
And
still, it
one of
always
the-
helps to.
One of the other things the 24-1 has been talking about at the mayor's meeting is having like is to have a, 24-1 umbrella of code enforcement. I don't think that would work very well with Normandy, but I think one of the things that we need to look at as a group, is can we utilize the police in some way to take some of the, like, if we know we have one person, we know the goal was always to bring on someone else, and it's been about 2 years, and Rick has been by himself. It was always the goal to bring on another person, and if we cannot do it from our administration budget, maybe we could do it from our police budget and have a person that's dedicated for that. Maybe that's an option. The other thing that I want us to consider also is, in June, there is a Strategic Code Enforcement Management Academy meeting in Memphis. It's $300 to go, and it's $159 a night. It's from June 12th to the 13th. It's in Memphis, Tennessee. And I think it would be good for Rick to go to it.
Well,
Or somebody.
So I think it would be worth us to think about
Right.
sending somebody to. I would like to see Rick and one council person go. I will help and chip in the money, but I think we're losing. We're losing education. Does that make sense?
Yeah, the 24-1 mayors, that whole conversation about code enforcement, uniformity across the 24-1 has been going on for a long time. We adopted, the village adopted the 2015 because that was the one that the 24-1 had decided to do. I don't know where they are with upgrading the books, but wherever they are, we need to be. And, you know, nobody upgrades the thing every year, but we do need to do that more consistently. The other thing, and this is an aside, you know, I'll schedule the meeting. It was 5:30 on the first Thursday, is that right? We'll double check and see whether there are any conflicts on the calendar, and if we don't have any, we'll have that meeting. This is a question related to vacant houses. Does the city of Normandy have a vacant house registry ordinance? We do.
We do.
And that's one of the things that we need to do. That means that somebody at some point is gonna have to identify the owners of these properties, send them a bill. I think it's probably $200 every 6 months. It doesn't do a lot, but over time, you can lien the property if they don't pay it. And the same thing with any of these administrative lawn cuttings or whatever we do, that all ought to be liened to those properties. And so that we can have money that comes in to support some of this.
We do that.
We do.
Normandy does it.
And if it hasn't already been given to the county, if it's a more recent bill and someone reaches out about
Right.
it, we send the bill to them. So
Okay, that's good. And I know that when I talked to Sam about how much you charge, it's significant. It's a lot more than we used to do in Little Glen Echo, but,
we have
you
to
know,
account for.
yeah, you've got, it does take some time and money. So I think that doing those things, it can help. But people do need to understand, and I have written stuff, I have drawn stuff, and again, it's on my computer and in my head, but I will share that with everybody.
Is there a
and-
conflict up for the first Thursday at 5:30?
I don't believe there is. Well, no.
What's the date?
1st of May.
1st of May, that's a week from tonight.
No conflict.
There's a
Okay.
newly,
Exception, like,
yeah, we have that seminar.
Oh,
No, with the exception if there is ever a Board of Adjustment meeting, they have reserved that day, but that's not a that's only by appeal, so,
Okay.
um,
You said the first,
tentatively, yes.
May 1st at 5:30.
That's a orientation seminar.
Oh, that's the day we have our, oh,
Is
that's our,
that the,
that's our installation.
oh,
No,
install-
that's at Merlin Heights, that's a seminar.
God, it's so many documents.
that's the new elected
Yeah, the
officials?
newly
Yes.
elected officials training.
So it can't be
Oh,
on the
yeah.
1st of May.
Wednesday is, Parks Board.
Off board, yes.
What's the time for the parks?
What about the next Thursday?
5:45.
Next Thursday is open,
The Thursday after is open, so that's the 8th?
yes.
May 8th, let me check my personal calendar, I'm not going anywhere, but I'll double
While
check.
you're looking at that, I just wanted to bring up something, Yolanda, this might, click for you, I think I spoke to you about this, and just so that you know about this, Ms. Vicky. When Mark had first gotten, elected as mayor, I was helping him with some stuff, and I spoke to people at 24-1, and I believe, I'm gonna say it wrong, CDBG funds?
Yeah, that's one of the things that we did talk about. I spoke to, we are going to try to figure out what the actual stipulations are for it, because one of the things, we were confused about the actual amounts that have to be awarded to individuals.
Oh,
So,
yeah, 'cause-
that is something that we're gonna, that I would like us to talk about, and so we're gonna start talking about the budget in May, so we won't be able to do it this year. The budget gets, ratified in September, and so we would start talking about it in May, and then, as a council, like, decide if we want to have our own program, because we could have our own,
Right, that's
or
what
we
I
could do
was
it through the county.
When I spoke to him about.
Yeah.
So,
Well, this-
at that time,
So,
when Mark came in, I'm gonna just roughhouse and say 3 or 4 years ago, speaking to people at 24-1 and whoever was over that CDBG fund, for the previous 10 years, every grant we received from them, that grant money went to concrete, they said primarily in 1 and in 2. I'm not sure, but
That's
one of the
what it
things that
went.
we were having the issue with was people that were having issues with, especially, this is an older community, we don't really have a lot of kids here, older people that are on fixed incomes, and one of the things that we discussed, and I told Mark that we could do is, and I mentioned this in a council meeting, but nobody ever reached out in reference to it, it's kind of a regular thing. If we get those funds, maybe we say, hey, this year, we have 10 years of concrete, let's put a third on concrete possibly, and the rest, let's do $4,000 or $5,000 grants for resident Normanists who are, senior citizens, restricted income, so they can help keep up their property.
Okay,
It doesn't have
so
to.
that's something that we can start talking about, like I said, May, the next workshop in May is when we're gonna start talking about it, so we could definitely, that could be something that's on the, on the
Yeah.
table, because we need citizen input anyway.
the
So-
amount that is available to individuals through the home improvement program, which is one of the subsets of CDBG, was changed to 7,500 a couple of years ago. And so that's the budget, that's the maximum amount that anybody gets. The city does not control that money. Everybody applies to the county. You can
Oh, this is
allocate,
separate, I was talking
yeah, this, CDBG is always through the county. So it's a federal program, and that's one of the other things that we have to look at, whether these federal programs are gonna exist anymore. So, yes, and it depends on census tract, whether you can use the money for certain kinds of things. Blight abatement is always available. Home improvement program is always available because it's based on the individual's income, not the neighborhood. So the home improvement program, HIP, and CDBG now has up to $7,500 that anybody can get who applies for it if the city has designated that's where they're gonna spend the money. And those are, it's not just a gift, it's a forgivable loan. You gotta stay in the house for at least 5 years and it's paid off over that time.
Oh, Ms. Vicky, what I was talking about was separate, not that that's a specific home improvement program. This was a conversation that instead of us spending a
Oh,
lot of
I got it.
money-
I mean,
okay.
there's, when you get when the city gets their amount of money for CDBG, the council and you guys can tell us how you want that money spent. So Normandy gets, I don't know, what's the amount? It's not, when we came in, we thought that would up the amount. It didn't. Our population wasn't wasn't
No,
significant
but that,
enough.
I think that like, we need to look, like I said, it can't be a
About
one prong.
160,000
It has to be, several. Let's move on, though. That's something we could talk about.
How can we go about making this a formal process for us to occupancy permit?
As far as the.
Like the things we talked about
thing-
today?
So that's
To make
gonna
it
be an
conditional.
ordinance.
Yeah, I mean,
I think the council needs to direct that the ordinance be
Yeah,
yeah.
created
okay.
to do that. I think you need to do two of them.
So,
You need to do one involving an occupancy permit, and I need to do one with requiring registered agents.
okay.
But
When can we
the
get?
council, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead, Mayor.
When can we get an ordinance for the subcommittee?
Well, as far as establishing a subcommittee, I don't necessarily think that needs to be done
doesn't
by
need to be done right now.
ordinance, that can be done by resolution.
Okay.
But that, we can do that at the next meeting.
At the next one?
Yeah.
At their next meeting, on the 8th, or?
No,
our
at the next council
At the-
meeting.
okay.
Yeah.
I
So
think
May,
it's the 13th.
May 13th,
Yeah.
okay.
And I think the
Is
third
there-
ordinance you need to consider is, do you want to adopt the same building code that St. Louis County has?
Yeah.
Okay.
Property maintenance or building, or both,
Both.
or all, or
Both.
update? I mean, this would be a great opportunity to just kind of take a look at where all of our technical codes stand. And although I think the county enforces some of our technical codes, like the electric and plumbing and stuff, so
Right.
they automatically have to be tied to the county. And
Right.
so updating building and IPMC might be a good idea as well.
So before we start this meeting, so I know we can't have a quorum, correct, right? We can't have,
If it's a subcommittee, then yeah, it's supposed to be less than a quorum.
okay.
Otherwise, it's just a council meeting.
So, you're gonna be over this, right?
And if the council assigns it to me.
Yeah, but she's assigned to it. So,
Well, that's what I think we can talk about, you know.
I think Tony, he's interested, in
Yeah.
you guys already know I'm interested in it, so there's three, we can't
Draw
have.
straws.
Right.
I think that we could have up to 4, because it takes 5 to make a quorum.
Exactly.
One of the reasons I think that.
Do you want, I mean,
We
one
want
thing is,
ci-
do
we
you
want
want
citizens.
citizens?
Yeah.
Yeah, I
We
mean,
want
Yeah,
citizens.
absolutely.
Yeah.
well, and Marty and I will work to put together a resolution
Okay.
to, you know, include, you know, blanks, and then we can, the council can debate what,
Don't look around.
you know, the names to put on those blanks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say people who regularly
definitely
come to
need-
meetings
yeah.
should be, you know, nominated.
You're volunteered, Ms. Moore.
Candace on it, yeah.
You volunteered, now you're on the
You
subcommittee.
can't look when you were on the
Look, you officially on.
you were originally on this committee.
Obviously,
They asked me to come to one and then I never heard back.
we
You are.
talked about those three ordinances,
Yeah,
but does the majority of council sitting here want to see that happen?
yes,
Yes.
yes,
Yes.
yes.
Yes. Can we vote now?
We haven't read it yet.
Right. We won't actually
The
get it.
establishment.
Yesterday.
That would just be a resolution.
Yeah.
That's a couple of years ago.
Also, rental
Or
property.
actually,
So-
sorry, I think
Wait,
you were, well, we can talk about that
gotta,
later.
we started late and I gotta
I
go.
think all this gonna be
I got
part of that, so we got it.
Boards and these are good topics, but I think we need to save this for your next meeting, so I don't want it to turn into a subcommittee meeting, so. Discussing personal information. So one of the things that I wanted to talk about is, when we're on Zoom, this is what we don't wanna do, just because there has been case law, I sound like you now, that discusses, that people have, or, municipalities have been penalized for what people have perceived as harassing behavior. So when we are on Zoom, please be conscious of the fact that you should not be saying anyone's address. If
Right.
you say, I sent an email, I would like a follow-up, that's good enough. But if you know that there is a property on your street that needs to be addressed, keep that in an email, because when you talk about nuisance properties and things of that nature, people can come back and say, well, you called the police on me so many times, I'm a domestic violence survivor. We don't want to dig up dirt that So we need to
Right.
make
We
sure
don't wanna
that we are.
specifically identify.
Yeah, we need to be professional about it. We need to make sure, I would even say
You can,
that,
well, I'm sorry.
Oh, sorry.
I mean, you can say things like, there's that property on Bland, right? You know, you
Yeah.
can say things like that, but don't say,
but if you're saying like that
You know,
gray house over there.
Miss
on-
Betty's house at
yeah.
430, you know,
Yeah.
don't say that, right?
I don't, yeah, so the addresses, let's put a moratorium on that. The other thing that I wanna talk about is when we're talking, when we're on Zoom, there are certain things for personnel that should not be said. And when we invoke a person's name, and I'm specifically talking about code enforcement, that person is doing their job. Now, if there is an issue that needs to be addressed, a personnel issue needs to be addressed in private, in a closed session, and that's where we need to keep it. Now, if we do have a problem with code enforcement, you can certainly ask for it to be put on the agenda for closed session and everything. If it's something that we need to address, then, you know, like, we will do that, because it's a personal issue and we do not want to get into litigation about those things. But to specifically say a person's name and they are doing a bad job, they don't do this or whatever, or he needs to, those are things that we do not want to happen.
Now you saying the council?
Yes,
Not-
I cannot
not the-
control
okay.
the First Amendment rights of people that stand at the
Okay.
podium. That is, if they wanna stand up and sing a song, do a dance and a jig for 3 minutes, they can do that. However, we need to make sure that we are policing ourselves when it comes to certain things. Does that make?
And it's just also in the effort of employee safety and staff safety as well, you know, it's really important to be conscious of that, so that's also a key point about it.
So, what, she said that we wanna make sure because of staff safety, we have had issues with people being harassed. So we wanna make sure, employees, so we wanna make sure that we are not singling people out and everything.
Two quick, comment, one question. The last two things that you mentioned are her council members. I noticed that when, after a meeting, that the notes with people who get up to the podium and speak, their address is listed in their name. Is that still permissible, or?
That's a required.
Yeah, that's a requirement.
And just rando, City of Normandy has 2 YouTube pages. One of them hasn't been touched for 10 months, the other one hasn't been touched for 2 months. So our last few council meetings that I think are supposed to be posted, they're nowhere.
Oh, I didn't know
That's
that.
in the process of being updated,
Yeah, I didn't know
and
we
I
had
can
to.
answer as far as the
Okay.
reason why we did have to shift to a second YouTube page.
Oh, was that the vote?
The first page was hijacked and
Yeah.
I was locked out, so I was unable to access it. I have worked with Google, I have tried contacting with someone with YouTube. I cannot speak to a person to resolve that issue, so unfortunately I was, forced to create the second page, and it is being in the process of updating
Thank
that
you.
information.
So I just wanted us to be mindful of that. Number 3, boards and commissions. So one of the things that I would like to do, and I kind of reached out to a couple of people, just going forward, I want us to, as a council, to think about the things that we're passionate about and things that we want to be involved with. So if it's like the school board, if it is the 24/1, if it's beyond housing. My goal is to have 2 people as contacts when it comes to board and commissions, and to be sort of a, what did you call it, Marty? I said liaison.
Ex officios.
Ex officio. So basically, what you can, this is the goal that I have, and it might be a lofty one, but this is a goal. To have 2 people for whatever it is that they want to, whatever it is that you want to do it. If it's 24/1, if it's school board, if it's, code enforcement, that you would be able to basically like tag team the, the tag team the meetings with a partner. So you guys would sit down and say like, or tell me like, this is the thing that I want to do. And then I would compile and say, okay, well, how about you work with this person? It might not be somebody in your ward. It might be a person from Ward 4 and a person from Ward 3. And then you guys would sit down and say like, okay, I can go to these meetings. And then the other person will say, okay, I commit myself to go to these meetings. And then when we have the council meetings, a good way to assimilate information, if whoever went to that meeting for that month, they would basically give a report to the citizens and the council to say like, these are things that we need to make sure that we're addressing in our community. You might go to a meeting and it might not be something that's beneficial for us, right? So you're like, they talked about this and I don't, this is what they said, but, I don't think that that like would help Normandy at all. But it would be a way for us to basically have more boots on the ground and more people, and Normandy have a presence when it comes to like being in meetings and everything, because a lot of the, we do have a lot of community groups, and it's hard to get to everything. But if we had a representative from our city doing that, and two people doing it, you can talk to each other and then like, hey, this is what they said last time, this is what, I think that would be beneficial for us to do. Same thing with our boards and commissions. I'm looking to see which ones are full, which ones are coming up for, that need new members. We need to address some of the things like on the board of commissions, like who's a voting member, who is actually on the board, and things like that. And so that's one of the things that I'm also working on. I did meet with North County Inc., me and Marty, somebody else was in the room. Oh, Chief. And we talked about possibly using that service and everything. I'm not sure, but I wanted to know if I asked Vicky if maybe there's a breakfast on the 7th. No, there's a breakfast on the 9th at 7:30 to 9:30, and it's a leadership academy, or not a leadership academy, a leadership breakfast. And basically they're going to have all of the people that interact with North County Inc. there. I cannot go. I typically cannot go to things like that. But if you or Vicky suggested that you Ms.
What is North County Inc.?
I'm gonna be
Yeah.
there.
It's North County Inc. is the North County North County Incorporated. It's a regional group. When they basically, what they do is they help municipalities with services. So they basically act as like kind of like the middleman. And so like you would go to them and say like, hey, we need help with one of the things that I asked them about was like, we need help with yeah, where are my notes? I said, how could you help us with
Economic development.
yeah, economic development? And they were like, oh, we have a program for people in North County if you want to make a business plan, like this is coming up. And we do this with businesses in North County. And they would basically like give you the connection to like talk to the people. I don't know if that's something that would be beneficial for us. You have to pay a fee for this service. And so I would like to have more input as to like what you guys would like to do. The representative also said is Rebecca Zoll. She said that she would come and talk to us at a workshop to give us like more information and everything, so we can do that. But I thought the breakfast would be like a good place to start, and everything. So,
7:30 in the morning, huh?
yep.
That's breakfast time.
Leadership starts early.
Can't do a brunch.
Yeah. Leadership starts
How
early.
many people are you looking for?
There you go, right there. You want
For early bird.
He said you want breakfast. You're a Marine. I know you up at 4 a.m.
5 o'clock?
Yeah, exactly. So, okay, so salute, got the Marine, and good. There you go. There we go. Okay, so wait a minute. What do I do with the thing? There it is. Take a picture of it because I need it back. Actually, I have to call her. Yeah, I have to call her and let her know that you guys are coming.
Sorry, just to leave a quick, extra side. So since you all did go ahead and pass everything for the contract for the lady, I know that May 1st was like a drop dead day for the county. Do you all feel confident that the contract will be able to be signed and secured and forwarded to them by May 1st?
Come on, Preservation Rep.
Yeah.
We got a 30-day extension.
Oh, you did, okay.
Can I get a motion to adjourn?
I make a motion.
Second.
All in
Can I
favor?
do that first?
A roll call? All right, ayes have it. We have a personnel issue to discuss in closed
Okay,
session.
so we actually need a motion for
Okay.
closed
Oh, yeah,
session. That's what I was trying to catch.
Okay, yeah.
Oh, yeah, I told you we were doing it.
I thought you said we weren't. I'm. that's my
Okay,
bad. So,
I need a
no,
motion
we-
to close this session and go
I
into
make a
closed
motion to
session.
close the session and go into
Closed session.
closed session.
Second.
Okay,
All in
so-
favor? Do
No,
I need roll call? Roll call vote, please.
All right, Councilman Sachsenheimer.
Yes.
Councilwoman Cleveland.
Yes.
Councilwoman Bayard.
Yes.
Councilman Washington.
Yes.
And
She's taking a picture.
Are you?
Okay. Okay, Councilwoman Camp.
Y'all too.
Say yes.
Yes.
We said we were going, but they wanna go too.
Oh, you guys wanna go?
I don't know, I wanna read
Right, I was
about it,
gonna
know
say-
what
Okay.
it is, and.
You can, I mean, it's the council's prerogative to invite, you know, members-elect into the closed session. I mean, they'll just,
Oh, no, they were talking about the cars.
oh, my mistake,
They're
I'm
not talking
sorry.
about
No, yeah, like, get me out of here. I don't want- I'm not